My name is Aamer Trambu, and today's agenda is primarily, about myself and the organization I work for, and about SAM tools, because sometimes when we attend organization webinars like this, there may be folks that are new to software asset management, and this may be the first ever webinar they may have attended. So I always take a moment to talk about some basic blocks about what software asset management is and what is a SAM tool. And then I'll get into the bulk of this presentation, which is 7 reasons your organization may not be benefiting from your software asset management tool. I found these to be strange, but very inspiring. And I wanted to make sure that organizations that invest millions before they go in and sign that check and drop, another contract for a software asset management tool, that they're really aware of what are the potential pitfalls so that they try to avoid them, and that they are able to succeed in achieving their goals in establishing a software asset management tool. Now, as Satolu mentioned, if you have questions, like she said, we're going to do that at the end. So we're going to keep some time for questions and answers. But I want this session to be interactive. So we have a few audience questions that I'm going to start with. And the first one is, do you have a software asset management tool at your organization? So in the chat, you can either type 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. That's all you need to type just a number in. Type 1 for I don't know what a SAM tool is, and that's totally fine to say that. And 2 says, no, I do not have a SAM tool at my organization. We don't have one. I know what it is, but I just don't have one. And the third one is, yes, I've purchased the tool, but not fully implemented it yet. Or 4, yes, we've implemented the tool, but not using it. And 5, yes, the tool is fully implemented and in full use. So I know we have some folks in there. Great. So I see the chat is open, and I'm seeing some 5s. The tool is fully implemented. I see some 3s as well. Is a purchase tool, but not fully implemented. And then you can be 6. I don't work at an organization right now. I'm just maybe between jobs or looking, or I'm in an organization where, we're consultants or something of the sorts. Outside of these 5, you could use number 6. So I see a few 5s here. That's great to see. Yes, the tool is fully implemented and full use. And that's fantastic. And I'm glad you're being able to join us today. And I'm seeing some 3s and some 2s. Great. So nobody here doesn't know what a SAM tool is. That's great to know. So I can move through that area pretty quickly. With that, I move on to my second audience question, and that is, please enter the city and country you're chatting in from right now. I'd love to see where you're from and where you're joining in from. So you can write down your city name. Like I'm going to go ahead and type in for myself. And so I see some Bangalore, India. I'm in Windsor, Canada right now, and it's great to see some folks from Netherlands, some folks from Bangalore and Andhra Pradesh and New Delhi. Great. I like Nandigama. Maybe Wara Prasada Rao, you should tell me about it sometime. Mason, Michigan, great. Any other folks? I see a few folks that are still shy to share their location, and that's fine. But we got your IP address already, so we know where you are. No, I'm just pulling your we don't have your IP address. Go ahead and great. So I see a few folks, many folks from India, and that's great to see that. Good. And I myself am from India, from the northern region of Jammu and Kashmir. So I'm always happy to share information from folks from all over the world, especially from folks that I've gotten to learn from. So what I'm going to be doing during the session, as you can see, and I'm sorry for not having skipped over to the audience question earlier. This is the one that we just covered. And so given that most of you already know what a software asset management tool is, I will be skipping through that area, but I'm not going to assume everybody is fluent in English. So my pace is going to be generally slower than what you may find in other places, or when you're listening to other speakers speak publicly. So please excuse me for that. I will be trying to stay a bit slow so that folks who are from these different parts of the world can follow with the English that I'm presenting. And if anytime it's like, well, Aamer, you're a bit too slow, just message me on Zoom and I can maybe pull it up a notch. But otherwise, we can go ahead and get started. Before we get started, I want to make sure we're all on the same page when it comes to learning objectives. The purpose of this webinar is specifically around areas of improvement around your present software asset management tool, or areas you should watch out for as you're establishing your software asset management tool. So given that information, is there anybody who has any other objectives besides these? If yes, please go ahead and share those objectives, because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. This helps set the right tone as we move in to a presentation. So if you're on the same page as I am, you can write same page or write same in the chat. Or if you're not on the same page, you can say, could you also talk about A, B, or C? And I can try to take the time out towards the end to talk about certain other things, because we will not be talking about audit defense. We will not be talking about software license compliance. We will just be talking about SAM tools, and that's really the goal here. So you can type same in the chat that, hey, our objectives are aligned here, or you can say, hey, I was really hoping you could talk about a certain other topic. I'm not seeing any responses in the chat at this time. Okay, I see a few others folks that say, okay, you have the same objectives that I do. Okay. And always feel free in the question and answer sessions if you need to go a bit on the tangent. We can consider that at that time. But it seems like everybody is on the same page here. Some brief introductions about myself and my organizations. I'm going to start with myself here. I have about 8 years experience as a software asset management professional. I started actually in software contracts, purchasing software licenses and setting up software agreements with publishers. And I was in the space where I was negotiating IT contracts for my organization. And I also managed some internal software audits. We worked in a team that also built a homegrown Visual Studio license compliance tool. Now that's a mouthful. What that means is I had an intern join my organization once, and this was an organization of about 20,000 people, and we had about maybe 300 Visual Studio deployments, and we didn't have a SAM tool. So the intern said, hey, could I build a dashboard of just what Visual Studio Professional and Enterprise are deployed, and which ones how many have been used? Because we had a problem with too many people installing a license, and we were unable to keep track of it. So we built it. It took us about 2 months, and it only tracked Visual Studio licenses. And it worked for a few months until Visual Studio changed their licensing model from Visual Studio Professional and Ultimate to Professional and Enterprise. And then we realized the challenges that come with it. And the other thing that the tool didn't have was secondary use rights that come with Visual Studio MSDN subscriptions. But overall, it was still a great learning experience, and something that really helps you value the effort that goes into putting these SAM tools together. They're tremendously powerful engines, each of these SAM tools. And my goal is not to diss them in any way. It's really to appreciate the effort that goes into setting them up, keeping those dictionaries running, and everything around them. And in addition to Visual Studio License and Compliance Tool, a homegrown tool, I've also helped build RFPs for SAM tools. An RFP is basically a request for proposal. An organization that has assets and wants to buy a SAM tool can put together their needs, a needs assessment saying, we would really like to keep track of our Windows servers and our Windows desktops, and this is how many we have. And we're looking to track Microsoft and Adobe licenses, and put together a short document and send that out to tool vendors and say, does your tool do this? What are the implementation timeline be? What are the cost of implementation be? What are the upfront costs of purchasing a tool and 3-year cost of maintenance? And then you receive proposals back from all of these tools. So I've built together a third-party SAM tool RFP template. I've shared it with other organizations that have reached out to me and said, hey, can we use that as a framework? And they've gone in and and been able to benefit from it. So if you have an organization that is considering an RFP, or if you want a copy of my draft, happy to share that with you as well. And I've built a SAM team from the ground up, a software asset management team at an organization that had no SAM practice, but it had other practices around asset management, but not specifically around the SAM space. And now, in addition to this, I want to take a moment to mention the tools I have personally worked with, and they're on the right side of your screen: Snow License Manager, License Dashboard, and Aspera USU. And now, obviously, the three of them are listed here, but which tool is the most widely used software asset management tool out there? That's a question for the audience. Go ahead and enter the name in the chat. SECM is a tool that's used for software asset management, yes, for deploying assets, but not necessarily provide a lot of flexibility. Okay, Flexera is mentioned there, FNMS, great. Excel, Sujin, you're right. Excel is the most widely used tool out there. The number of folks that use Excel is staggering. And even folks that use software asset management tools still use Excel to analyze their information or to run a few additional deeper analysis and insight. So despite the number of tools out there, you will still see organizations that use Excel to track their assets, to review their assets, to share knowledge about what assets are around. So Excel really is the most widely used software asset management tool out there. Great, and that was Sujin. Sujin, thanks again for that. And then I see ServiceNow SAM Pro, it's also used, yes. And ServiceNow is also, as you can see on my right side, I've not used the ServiceNow SAM Pro module, but I've used the Service Desk module. And I found the Service Desk module pretty beneficial when it comes to Service Desk work. Besides that, I have some experience with Adobe Creative Cloud, Visual Basic, Azure Management System, SCCM, and Casper for Mac, and Office 365 license optimization. And I've also built some Python scripts. That's about me on the tools. On software publishers, here are software publishers that I have worked with: Microsoft, Adobe, VMware, Oracle, Java, Micro Focus, CA Technologies, IBM. And I've also spoken at other conferences on software asset management best practices over the last few years, and I enjoy sharing my knowledge. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or otherwise if you have any questions that may not have been answered today. But as Satolu mentioned, they have a LinkedIn group where you can ask those questions around software asset management that may not have been addressed today. With that, a brief about my organization. I work for an organization in Canada called Longview Systems. They're about 1,500 employees. We provide IT services, and we're a managed services company, help with modern workplace application setup and hardware and software requirements. And we also have our own internal cloud, besides providing licensing and procurement and sales of Microsoft and VMware software. So that's Longview Systems. We're based out of Canada and United States. Now, when we're getting into what is software asset management, obviously all of you already know it, but basically optimizing the use of software assets. Why do we care about software assets? Because software assets are resources that hold economic value. And when we talk about economic value, a company that owns or controls software assets with the expectation that they will provide a future benefit. Software assets are reported on a company's balance sheet, and they're purchased or developed internally to increase a firm's value or benefit the firm's operation. With that, we talk about how do you optimize software assets, because that's really the question a lot of folks may have. Well, you monitor how much you are using, and you keep track of that. And you monitor the folks that have stopped using it, and you track sprawl. Sprawl is basically an expected growth in deployment of software assets. These are some of the ways you optimize software assets. We'll move on to another audience question. What should a SAM tool be able to do? Any answers on that? The question is, what should a SAM tool be able to do? That answer. And then Amit is saying license management. And then we have Sukriti saying capturing license usage. Pradeep is saying provide clear visibility into the entire IT estate. That's great. That's a good comprehensive answer. Sujan says entitlement and deployments. Saurav is saying maintaining compliance levels. Good. Prithviraj is saying another very important thing, which is alert. Provide an alert when the user is no longer with the team. Karthik saying that SAM tool should be able to tell you when you're out of risk. From an audit, Azaz is saying provide information of what software is deployed and if it is being used. Great. All of these are great answers. And as you realize with these answers as well, there's a lot of expectations we have from software asset management tools. And a SAM tool really is a tool to generally manage your software assets. And then if you take a moment to look at Gartner's definition, it's quite a mouthful here. A SAM tool is something that helps optimize your software and your SaaS spend while supporting the automation of tasks required to maintain compliance with software license and SaaS subscription use rights. But generally, as you mentioned in this, and I see Preethi's also added, tracking asset inventory and software installed in the environment, there's a lot you want a SAM tool to be able to do. And something that may also have not been mentioned is identify software that was not used in the last 60 or 90 days, as you can see in the bottom of the screen, number 10. And then so many other things. You want to know whether any piece of software is paid or free, something that SAM tool providers call license intelligence. So now it's time for us to move on to the most important part of today's presentation, which is the 7 reasons your organization may not be benefiting from your SAM tool. And before I continue that, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for being engaged, because it's going to really help us in this part of the presentation. We're going to start with our first one, poor knowledge of your IT environment. So let's say you are an organization that has purchased a SAM tool and you implemented it, but you realized a bit too late that you actually don't know. What do you not know? The size of your own IT network. You don't know how many devices you had in the first place. Your tool is showing 500 devices, but you never took the time to ask other departments or other subsidiaries of your organization, how many devices should there be in all, and how to make sure that all of them are reflected in this SAM tool. So one of the most important things that you need to do before you even sign up for a software asset management tool is to understand your IT environment. How big is my network? How many desktops? How many servers? How many users do I have? How many users may be using multiple machines, or how many machines may be having multiple users? Your affiliates and your legal structure, and what is the subsidiaries that fall under it? Are there other sub-organizations or other factories or industries that actually you are responsible for licensing them? And then have there been any recent mergers and acquisitions? So all of these are critical for understanding your IT environment, and also critical for the success of a SAM tool. Because if you have a SAM tool that gives you great visibility into just 500 devices, and you have 2,500 other devices that are nowhere to be seen in your SAM tool, that really isn't a place you want to be, because that's a SAM tool that's not working. It's not giving you, like one of the folks said, and I think that was Pradeep Paul Joseph said, your tool should be able to tell you full visibility into your entire IT estate, not just, hey, yeah, my department's got this 500. So what are some of the ways that we could do to avoid this issue? Who are some of the people we could speak to? Why don't we ask in the chat? Put it in the chat. Who are the people that can help you answer this question? How big is your network? What department should you reach out to? Or which person should we reach out to? The legal team? You could reach out to the CIO, yes. The chief information officer or somebody reporting to him. he should be able to tell you how big his network is and how many folks are there. Faisal says CTO, your chief technology officer as well. Anurag says, yes, folks in the IT department in general should be able to tell you how big your network is. Your infrastructure and your end user computing stakeholders, great there again. Now, there's also another thing that we could be missing. I reached out once to an IT department to know how many devices they have. But you know what? There are other independent IT departments at this organization. And so sometimes you need to reach out to folks outside, like maybe the CIO or CTO, and tell them, hey, this is the information I've gathered about these devices. Are you aware of other organizations that we may need to consider as we build this out? Yes, your system architecture or your server architecture or your networking team, they have a great amount of information because they set up those networks. So they should know as well. And then we have, as Pradeep said, your SCCM, your security infrastructure team, and your human resources. Great. I think that's a good collection here. You reach out to the team that manage your desktops. You reach out to the information security team because they always know the number of nodes that are connecting to the network, and your human resources as well. Great. So that will help you address this issue. Now we'll move on to our second reasons why SAM tools fail is poor knowledge of SAM tool vendors. Now, when you're going out to get a tool, you know about some tools because you've heard of them and they're popular, but you may not understand all the tools that are out there. And the goal isn't, when I want to, I need to fix, if a device is broken or my phone has been damaged, I don't need to know every tool that's out there. I just need to know what tools can fix my phone. But the question, instead of asking that, I need to ask, what specifically do I need to fix with my phone? Or what's a specific issue I'm trying to address here? And the same way with organizations. How do you solve or avoid a pitfall like this? And the answer is you figure out what are your immediate needs. Let's solve for them. Let's not say what's the greatest thing I can get, or what's the most expensive tool I can get, or what are all the bells and whistles I can get. No. What's the immediate need I need to fix? I'm having a challenge keeping track of my SQL Server installations. I need a tool that can keep track of all the servers out there and that can license and track SQL Server license compliance. You can say, well, that's a bit too tiny and a bit too focused. No, I'm not kidding. This is actually something that's very important for you to do, is really identify the most important feature you need, and then try to see how SAM tools out there can help you. Because what will happen is you will invite folks to do your demo. And they will show you so many amazing features in the SAM tool that you'll be blown away. But you never ask them, hey, does your tool provide software license compliance for SQL Server? If yes, can you show that feature? Yeah, we could show that to you. So that you're not spending an hour looking at a full demo when all you needed was a 5 or 10-minute feature. And then you're like, yes, it does this well. And then it may have other benefits as well. So the second most important pitfall that folks can get into is poor knowledge of all the SAM tool vendors. And the way to address that is not to go out and try to learn about all the SAM tools. As you can see in this image, there's so many tools out there. Instead, you should focus on figuring out your immediate needs. And then you need to align it with your organization's goals. If your organization, for example, is growing at a rapid pace, and they're actually not cared about SQL Server license compliance because they're like, we're moving to the cloud in the next 6 months. And you're like, if you're going to be moving all these SQL Server workloads to the cloud, as an organization, as an IT department, that's our goal, to migrate to the cloud, then why am I wasting time and effort trying to find a SAM tool that will figure out license compliance for SQL Server? So you see what I'm saying? You always need to be aware of the bigger picture, and you always need to look at it from, what are my organization's goals? Another example is there was a software asset management manager I met whose organization was based out of California. And I don't want to mention the name of the organization, but I said, how is it doing software asset management for your organization. And she said, it's very different. I said, how is it different? She said, because our IT goals are not to ensure compliance. The goals of our software asset management team are to support company growth. Her company was growing at such an insane pace, and the competitors were also going at such a great pace, that her CIO had told her, if a software developer requests a tool or requests a software or requests a software library, and it has never been requested by anybody in the organization, this is a new software request, that request by the developer has to be fulfilled within 60 minutes. What does that mean? That means if Aamer is a developer at an organization and he sees some new tool that's developed out there and he needs it for his code, if he makes a request at 10:30 a.m., at 11:30 a.m., that software has to be reviewed, considered for security risks, installed on that person's organization within 60 minutes, the whole process. What do you folks think about that? How many of you think that it's quite a realistic expectation? And how many of you think that's a very challenging role that a software asset manager has? The reason I'm bringing this up is because sometimes as software asset managers, we bring our history and our past with us and think that's my role. No, your role is really to align with your organization's goals and make sure that you're fulfilling that. Now, instead of making sure that that person's, in order to make sure that you're able to provide 60 minutes, yeah, it's quite challenging. That's great, Amit. In order to meet that 60-minute challenge, what does that mean? That means as soon as user A requests that, like let's say Abdullah requests that, and he comes in and he says, I need the software. You have 60 minutes to fulfill it. But you know what? Abdullah is on a team of 25 developers. Guess what? All of those folks are going to realize, well, we need it too. And you realize, well, how do I sign a statement of work, a master services agreement, and everything else with that specific software publisher in such a short amount of time? So they had developed processes in place to make sure that they were not, holding these developers up, but they had signed agreements with software publishers that, hey, if we buy additional license from you, we're going to go ahead and deploy it, but you agree that 12 months from now, we will give you an audited number of the number of folks that are actually using it, and we will post-pay for that upfront. We'll prepay for some now, and we'll post-pay for some then. Is that okay with you? And the software publishers are like, yeah, that's great. We're glad to sign this agreement with you. It was like an ongoing true up, similar to the Microsoft anniversary. And yes, Amit, you're right. What if 25 people ask for 25 different tools? They've got to be able to fulfill that. Because this company was growing at an insane rate, money was not a factor for them. Time really meant a lot. And empowering those software developers meant even more than anything else. And so they moved at a very different pace. So back to my point, I'm just trying to help you understand, aligning with your organization's goals is very important. And I once worked in an organization where they continuously kept deploying Oracle databases at such a pace that, and their purchasing process took 2 weeks. So if someone wanted to buy Oracle, they already had an agreement in place, but the purchase order and the approvals between the manager and the directors took so long that it took 2 weeks for a person to get his license for Oracle database. And so they decided to go with an unlimited license agreement with Oracle, because that just made sense for them. Because they're like, we can't continuously keep track of all these people that are buying Oracle databases all the time. And so whenever they could get an unlimited license agreement with a publisher, they went ahead with it. And you or me as a software asset manager can't go in there and say, no, we shouldn't be doing this because this is a lot of waste. They're like, no, there's a lot of wasted time that we have been able to save as a result of this. So this was the second pitfall, and I want to move on to our third point at this: painfully slow implementation. I'm going to ask for a moment so I can get a sip of water. Please give me 30 seconds here. I forgot to get my glass of water to this meeting. I just want to check with the host, Satolu or Imtrenla. Are you okay if I get a 30-second break here?
Yes, of course. Please go ahead.
And talking about challenging times and full of risk. Sure, yeah, thanks for that comment. Uh, we're going to be switching to topic number 3 on areas, uh, points of failure around software asset management tools. And this is something a lot of you folks may have noticed, and especially folks that may have purchased a tool but have not implemented it. How many of you have been surprised at how long software asset management tools take? One, for yes, they take long. Two, no, they're pretty fast. Please hit the chat. How many of you are surprised at how long software asset management? Great, I see a few ones there. And if you think no, software admin tools can be implemented pretty quickly, hit 2 in the chat. So I see a few ones there, starting with Azaz and Anurag and Sujan. Thanks. They take a lot of time. Now, here is where, we need to accept a few facts. Software asset management tool vendors do a pretty poor job in sharing transparently how long implementations take. And that really is their fault. And I'm not going to hold back and say, well, no, they really are not being transparent. Certain tools can be implemented quickly, but a majority of tools that I see take such a long amount of time. But when you speak to the salesperson, they'll tell you 8 weeks or 2 weeks. And then when I started asking other customers, hey, how long did your tool take? And they said, well, we purchased our tool a year and a half ago. I'm like, okay, so when did you complete your implementation? Oh, we haven't completed implementation yet. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're saying that you started implementation 18 months back, and even today your implementation is not complete? Like, yeah, it's not completed. Oh, well, it's also partly our fault. Our security team took too long to review their agents and everything else. And I was like, wow, 18 months is quite shocking. Okay, it may have taken 18 months, but are you already paying for your software even though it's not implemented and you're not benefiting from it? Yeah, we started paying for it upfront. I was like, so what are you doing as an organization? Who is your software asset manager, and how is he okay with paying for something that hasn't even been implemented and paying the second year of fees and so on and so forth? So you can see it's really both sides. And the software asset management tool vendors are not being transparent. They need to be a lot more transparent about how much time it takes. And they should at least say, well, the last 5 customers that we deployed this tool for, they took 3 months or however long, but it's really time for them to be very transparent about that. And I'm not seeing that transparency yet. And the second thing is customers should be a little more aware and keep their guard up and make sure that they control the timelines around payments, around the contract timelines, around milestones, and around implementation. Yeah, and some folks in the chat have said, yes, Azaz, on average, a minimum of 6 months to start practically using it. Now, all of this is fair, and as I've shared on the slide here, there's delayed deployment of your discovery agents. Second, there's lack of access to your data sources, whether it's SECM or Active Directory, where you get a list of your devices or others. And then there's delayed integration of connectors. Software asset management tools today come with connectors that can connect directly to your VMware vSphere, to your vCenter, to your Hyper-V, to your Office 365, to your Adobe Creative Cloud, so that you don't need to track that anywhere else. And delaying that integration can take time. Now, there are SAM tools, and I want to balance this conversation as well, because I work in a managed practice. My organization does help on a 3-month basis, where we come in, we implement the tool, and we let the agents run, and we provide an analysis with a complete picture of, hey, in the last 90 days, these are the number of devices that we've been tracking. This is how much software usage has been done. These are users that haven't used it. And all of this is in a 90-day window. So it's a 3 months from implementation to deployment to consumption of data to analysis. So it's not necessarily that all tools take 6 months. Some of them do, but the tools that we use, that we've been able to set up a 3-month agreement with a lot of customers, and we call it a health check. You may not be a full-time SAM tool user, but we come in with a SAM tool, we implement it, and you're able to utilize it, and then you're able to benefit from it all. And we end the contract because we give a presentation and everything else, and recommendations on your Microsoft or Adobe, whichever one you choose, because obviously we can't do a lot with the 3-month period data, but it's significant enough that a lot of our customers are able to benefit from that 3-month engagement as well. So I just don't want to diss all SAM tools. There are some really good, effective tools out there as well. With that, we'll move on to our fourth one. The fourth pitfall is the manual effort required to load software entitlements. In general, most SAM tools require software purchase history to be added manually, and that's how it has been done. You could load it, in Excel in a much simpler way, but it's still quite a lot of manual effort required to upload the license entitlement history. So what that actually surprises a lot of customers, because they're like, we thought it was a one-click, uploads all my Microsoft license, or I connect it to Microsoft.com and somehow it gets my purchase history from 1998 for Windows and Office and Windows Server and SQL Server from 2003 and onwards. No, that's not how it works. It really is a tremendous amount of manual uploading of entitlement information. And there's also the auto allocation versus the manual assignment of software license entitlements. If you buy SQL Server licenses, you want to assign them to certain cores that are on a certain server. And how that assignment happens is generally very manual and very time consuming. And it has to be done. But once you do it, then you have a much clearer idea of your effective license position. So there is a tremendous amount of manual effort required to load software entitlements. And this can surprise some folks, but it's important for you to know it as you move into it. And it's more to keep that data ready. So whenever that it's time to do it, as an organization, you're not scrambling at that time when the loading time comes. How many of you agree with this specific one? Say 1, I agree, 2, 2, I disagree. Because I want to know if there's someone who has lots of ITAM talent. Because we're definitely seeing a lot of organizations that struggle with the insufficient number of. So hit 1 for I agree, there's insufficient expertise, or 2, there's a lot of professional SAM folks out there. Great, yeah. It seems like everybody's on the same page here. There's a lot of issues around software asset management when it comes to staffing. When you're hiring, especially, you ask the question, should I hire staff to manage the tool before the tool is purchased, or during the tool implementation, or after the tool is implemented? And then you go out to hire them, you realize, where are those folks? And then you will see a lot of folks who say, well, I have 10 years of IT asset management experience. And I'm like, okay, so how do you, Windows Server Standard, how many virtual machines can you? And they're like, no. I was just managing IT assets. I was, taking it from one user and giving it to another user, giving it to another user and reharvesting it. So I was just doing a lot of manual work. I was like, well, that is IT asset management, but I really was looking for someone who has done it at scale with some licensing experience and everything else. No, well, that's not, I don't have any of that. And you have other folks who will tell you great stuff around automation, data pipelines, and repositories, and you're like, okay, let's hire that person. You hire them, and you realize they really don't know how to get stuff done, because software asset managers require tremendous skills around speaking with senior management, and that's something probably Beth Kaminsky spoke to about, getting that buy-in from senior management across departments, not just the IT department. And you're surprised how you need a certain personality skills that not every person who is in software asset management necessarily has. And besides the issue of having a small talent pool, there's the problem of training. You want to train them, and you realize that the training that's available online isn't comprehensive, or it doesn't go into details around how to assign or unassign licenses, how to move from during a license renewal, how is that managed. So it's really a few and far between when it comes to the training. There's a lot of folks that offer training, and some of them are really good, but they may not be providing all the areas that you as an organization may need to run your software asset management, to set up a software asset management team, and how to communicate with different departments. All that cannot be included in a training module. And then the challenge is staff retention. Staff retention means you train someone, you like them, you're growing with them, they're doing well, you think you're paying them well, and they give you a notice saying, sorry, we've got another offer, another company, we need to leave. And we're seeing that as well as an organization. So I'm sure some of you folks are facing that. And I'm sure some of you have benefited from staff retention issues, because that demand for staff for asset management professionals means some of you get a better paycheck at the end of the year. And we ask God for what is good for us, wherever it may be. And the growing dependence on ITAM consultants. Now, there have been organizations that have turned to, you know what, we can't keep up with hiring someone, training them, and them leaving again. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sign a services agreement with a IT consulting organization like Longview. We provide that as well, and there are others as well. And they found that, okay, you know what, Longview can manage any of these staffing issues or retention issues or training issues. We engage with them. They bring those skilled people in. They hit the ground running, and they found that extremely beneficial. They're like, great, we have a Microsoft renewal coming up in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, and we need to take action now. So can you as an organization, Longview, come in and tell us what we need to do right away? Because we don't have the ability to hire someone and help them understand what Microsoft even means, what an agreement looks like. And so IT service, ITAM consultants play a very important role in this staffing shortage issue. And then we have number 6, pitfall number 6, no action. We have organizations that fail to act on tool recommendations. Here is an organization that has a SAM tool, it's working well, the SAM tool is giving them good recommendations. The SAM tool is telling them, here are 20 users that haven't used their Adobe Acrobat Pro in the last 90 days. But guess what? There's no action. They're unable to harvest software. They're unable to install software, and they're unable to remove and unsubscribe users. And some of the reasons for that is because they have poor communication with the IT service desk. And then they're unable to reduce subscription at renewal time. And so they end up renewing their software agreements knowing that they have shelfware. Shelfware is basically software that's just sitting on the shelf and that's not being benefiting anyone, because they couldn't go to users and harvest it. I knew an organization that had 4,000 Creative Cloud, all apps, and Adobe Professional and Adobe Standard subscription. At least 3,000 subscriptions they had. So when it came time for renewal, they didn't have the manpower or the staffing to go out and communicate with users that hadn't, and we communicate, here are users that haven't used it for the last 90 days. Because you can save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars on this agreement for this coming year. And if it's a 3-year agreement, you're going to save a lot. And they said, yeah, but our service desk is understaffed and we have no way to act on these recommendations. And the software asset manager felt so tied up, and he was like, and he ended up trying to, act on them himself as a lone soldier. And whatever he was able to grapple with, he saved that. But what ended up happening was his the number of requests for new Adobe software kept outpacing the harvesting he was doing. So even though he did a good job, to his senior management, it looked like nothing had happened at all. And then we helped him show a trending graph where he saw that this is the direction it was moving in, and as a result of the savings, it did kind of stabilize, or there was some course correction. So no action is another, and you can say, well, the SAM tool is implemented, but it's not successful because it didn't benefit anybody. And this comes to the leaking roof. You can have a SAM tool, you can have it fully implemented, but you have a leaky roof. What that means is you're somebody who sees the floor is wet and you wipe the floor clean. You're like, now it's nice and clean. And then you look up and you see it's dripping again and you keep wiping the floor. You should stop wiping the floor and fix the leaky roof first. What that means is if there's a faulty process, you need to correct that process. Don't delay fixing that implementation. Lack of communication between SAM team and other process owners can lead to these issues. If there's a continued process gap, it worsens the existing inefficiency in the SAM processes. For example, if there's anytime a user joins the organization, if they are by default given a Visio legacy license, like a Visio 2016 standard installed on their machine, and that's part of the disk image for everyone who gets a laptop, that means you have a process here that automatically is leading you to non-compliance. A SAM tool is not going to fix that, but a SAM tool will give you visibility into that problem. But now it's upon you to act to do, number one, remove that non-compliant install. And second, make sure you ask those managers managing that process to remove non-compliance from their current process. Remove that Visio 2016 standard that's being default installed on every single desktop in the organization. So I hope these 7 have been beneficial. This is the summary of the 7 reasons your organization may not benefit from your SAM tool. I know we have a lot more time on us, and I'm glad to see that.